third edition of the Sun Sports Show. We have all four sports editors here for this session. Nick Clark, John Sherman, Mike Shaughnessy, and the host Greg Clevin. Remember, you can see this show on mnsun.com. And getting underway here, we'll just recap the Prep Bowl. Nick covered the state 5A championship Wayzata Trojans. Nick, discuss that Prep Bowl day and the championship.
Well, it was, it ended up looking a lot like the rest of Wayzata's season, where they put on quite a show. It was actually, though, early on, probably the biggest test they've had this year. Blaine came in, scored just a second first half touchdown that Wayzata had given up this year. James Peterson, Blaine's multi-dimensional quarterback, made it happen. Marched him down the field, and then after that, that was it. Wayzata's defense pretty much shut the door from there. The Trojans scored on a 99-yard drive in the third quarter that really changed the entire complexion of the game. Drive was capped, ended on a 4th and 9 call. It was kind of a backwards lateral pass, and Fritz Rock, their outstanding receiver, caught the ball, made like a 360 spin, and threw it in the end zone to A.J. Tarpley for a touchdown, which at the time made it 21 to 7, and Wayzata just kind of took over from there. Quite a year, quite an impressive year. It's the first undefeated season in over 50 years at Wayzata High School. I think in 1952 they went 8-0. Of course, before then there was no Prep Bowl. This year they won all 13 times they played, and finished it with an exclamation point and winning that championship. Their second in 4 years. Friday night at the Dome.
Did Coach Anderson tell you how they set up a tremendous game plan to stop Peterson and contain that wide open offense?
He did allude to it a little bit, and they were in a fortunate position where they ended their regular season by playing Edina, and Anders Lee and James Peterson drew a lot of comparisons this year in what they were able to do with both their arm and their legs. So not only did they have film on James Peterson heading into the game, they also had some live action almost against the same type of quarterback, and I think being in those situations and finding a way. Really, they were the only team this year, to hold Anders Lee in check, and finding a way to do that and having that confidence, I think, helped. And his big thing was heading into the game is they were who they were. It's a cliche, but when you were winning by what they were winning by this year, and when you were as dominant as they were, most weeks this year, there's not a lot of reason to change. Go out and Blaine can beat you, playing you the way you play. Hats off to them. As it turned out, they couldn't.
John, discuss the power conferences, the Lake Conference and Classic Lake. You got a chance to see both. You've always been a big Classic Lake fan.
Well, I'm very partial to the Classic Lake. Of course, that's a conference that I cover. I'm very familiar with those players. Nick mentioned Anders Lee, who I think is the best quarterback to come down the pike in Edina in a long time. I saw the Edina Wayzata game, and Wayzata won that game 16-10 with Edina. A very hard-fought game. I thought Edina, Minnetonka, Hopkins, and of course Wayzata were probably 4 of the top teams in the state, and I got to see them all quite a bit this season.
What about my Eden Prairie team?
Well, they're not bad, but Eden Prairie would fit in well with that top group of Classic Lake teams, and they did defeat Minnetonka, and they defeated Hopkins, so we've got to give them their props too. Mike Grant, of course, does a great job out there, and it's kind of unusual not to see him down at the Prep Bowl this year, not playing in the Prep Bowl anyway. And I predicted from the start of the season that Wayzata would be the team to beat, and they sure followed through with a great season.
Mike, were you surprised Wayzata winning the way they did in the championship game?
Not really, no. They had pretty much run over teams virtually all season with the exception of the Edina game. I noticed there were some wishful thinkers in the local media who picked Blaine to win that game, and I just didn't see it based on the way they essentially throttled some other pretty good teams. I was curious as to why Wayzata chose to go for it on that 4th and 9 play when they were already up by a touchdown as opposed to kicking the field goal, because as it turns out, that had to be a tremendously deflating play for Blaine, because not only did Wayzata choose to go for it, but they picked up the first down and turned out, got a touchdown. It was basically a gadget play. Did Anderson talk much about why they chose to try that play at that time?
You know, I don't know if he was asked that exact question, but he did allude to the fact that they wanted to end that drive, you know, with an exclamation point. They started their own 1 yard line. They went that far. And I think part of it too was at that point in the game, Wayzata's defense had really started to take control. And I think even if he missed, they were still up by a touchdown. And I don't think he thought in his heart Blaine could go the length of the field on him. And you know, it was a gutsy call. It worked. It was one, and I asked both Fritz Rock and the quarterback John Reese to kind of set it up after the game. You know what went into the play, and they both said that they've been working on it, and it's kind of been in their back pockets all year. They've just been waiting for the time to use it, and they had set the play up. They've been running that play throughout the year, kind of that wide receiver screen, and then Fritz would just take off and run with it. This time, he turned. You know, Blaine, to their credit, read it perfectly. Had a defender right there, and he had to spin out of a tackle. But AJ Harpley was all alone, and you know he got the ball up there, and it was a pretty easy pitch and catch. But you're right. You know, tough decision in the state championship game to go for it on fourth down, and you know, second guessers would have love to see him miss it, but you know they scored, and like I said, it kind of essentially put it away from there.
Yeah, I can't see how people who've watched much of 5A football this year could be surprised that Wayzata won, because they had two running backs who, if they made either one the feature back, probably would have gone for about 1,500 yards. They had an excellent quarterback, outstanding receivers, and nobody moved the ball on them all year.
Right.
And I think one of the more underrated parts of their team was their offensive line. They had two all-metro kids, and I mean they would just that's where it started and ended. You know, they dominated games. Those running backs, you know, there were some nights where they had holes wide enough for the four of us to run through. I mean, it was impressive what they were able to do, and they just wore teams down. You could see it by the third and the fourth quarter all year long.